Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to take a look at Tiny Epic Tactics. Tiny Epic Tactics is published by Gameland Games. It is going to be a 1 to 4 player skirmish style game where each player is going to get 4 different heroes, and they're going to use the terrain as best they can to get majority control in certain areas of the board and potentially wipe out some of the opponent's heroes to gain points. So let's go ahead down the table here. I'll give you a general idea how the game plays, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is what a setup of Tiny Epic Tactics might look like. Now, at the start of the game, you are going to give one person a card in each of the classes. So you randomly will shuffle each of the classes and you'll give them one of these, either beast, knight, wizard, or ranged archers. And you'll take turns picking locations or corners specifically of the board that you're going to place your figures. There's a lot. This is just one deck. So this is the knights. There's one deck and there's one over here too. So there's a lot to pick from. They have a solo side, so you have a solo enemy. There's a huge solo component to this game, and they put a lot of detail into it where you're actually trying to just gain these crystals on here, and then there's a whole solo deck there. All the cards, like I said, are two-sided, so all the heroes become monsters or enemies while you play the game. The solo is really in-depth. It's really good. We're actually not going to go over that today, but if you like solo games, I would highly recommend checking out Tiny Epic Tactics for that, because there's a lot of depth and a lot of richness in their solo mode. I'm just going to briefly go over the rules for Tiny Epic Tactics. This isn't going to be a complete rules overview. There's plenty of how to play videos out there, and I just wanted to show that although the book can seem a little intimidating because there is like a lot of text in here, the game is actually not all that complicated. So basically in the game, you are going to try to gain points by either eliminating an opponent's hero or by gaining control of an area and getting control points on there. At the end of the game, you're going to get your points totaled up for however many enemy units you have taken out and how many areas that you have controlled through the game. And you can only control up to 5 different ones. At the end of the game, you're going to get 5 points for every flag you get. Once you get to here, so when it goes to here, you've gained control of that and you get that flag. So you get 5 points for every flag. You get 2 points for every unit that you had that survived, and you get 2 points for every unit you have captured. And at the end of the game, if you're sitting in any of these villages, you'll get an additional point. That is, whoever has the highest score at the end of that is the winner of the game. The game will end in one of 2 different ways. One player has had all their units captured, so they're all gone, so the game will end then. Or one player has taken the final flag, and the game will end for that. So how do you play the game? Well, on your turn, you can take up to 3 different actions. And these 3 different actions can be spread among your different players. When you get down to less and less units, like when you get down to 2 units, you can actually take 2 actions on one of your units without penalty. When you get down to 1, you can take all 3 actions on one without penalty. What do I mean by penalty? Well, if you activate a unit twice in a turn, they become fatigued, and you put a fatigue counter on it. The only way you can get rid of a fatigue counter is by paying 2 health or not taking any actions on that unit for a turn. Then it comes off. Those are the 2 ways you get rid of a fatigue counter. You can get rid of a fatigue counter at any time by losing 2 health. It's important to know because of when I get into how combat goes. So throughout the game, you're going to be picking these units, and you're going to either be moving them, attacking, or either through melee or range, or using some of their special abilities that they have on the cards. So when you're looking at a unit here, you're going to look at the speed. So this one here can move up to 3 spaces. So let's say I'm a blue player and I want to move my mage 3 spaces, so I can go 1, 2, 3. Now if you notice that I can only move orthogonically, I cannot move diagonally in any way in this game. So that's all that it allows me to do. I can't move diagonally, I can't attack diagonally, everything is done orthogonically. So if I'm looking for range, I do it orthogonically. I don't count diagonal spaces at all. Another thing worth of note is that if I ever enter a village, so I just entered a village on here, I will gain 4 health. So it's important to note while you're doing that. If you get knocked back into a village, which we'll go over in a minute, you don't gain health. So we're going to be moving around. We're going to be trying to go to different areas of the map. One of the most important areas are going to be these colored areas. So this is going to be the purple area here. And you notice that there's little purple spots. And this is the trigger space. So if I go here, it's going to look to see at the end of my turn who has majority. If it's tied, no one has majority. If I have more than any other opponent in these spaces, then I get to move this flag up. Nothing happens when you move the flag up for the round 1 and round 2. If you move your flag up the third time, the person who had majority control gains that flag, and they will get the 5 points at the end of the game. So there's a little bit of area control in this game. In addition, you can also attack other units. But before we do that, I did want to mention something. Why is this terrain all over the place? And it has to do with movement. So in movement, if I want to move up a terrain level, I have to spend an additional movement. So if I was right here, this would take 2 movement to move up here. Same if I went up to this level. Now there's also peaks. If I go to a peak, it takes an additional movement. So if I want to move here to here, it's 2 movements. For adjacency, peaks don't matter. But what a peak is really cool about is a ranged person anywhere on the board is within range, which is really, really nice. A couple other things on the map that have to do with terrain is going to be the Ballista. If you go to the Ballista, you can actually fire that. And I believe that's like 2-3 spaces away, and it does 1 damage. But if you hit a ranged unit, they can fire back. We'll get into that in a minute. Still with the Ballista. These tunnels here, they will teleport to any other place there's a tunnel. So if I move into a tunnel, I can pop out here. And there's a mini expansion that you get in the deluxe version, or you can pick up separately, that has these little lanterns. And if you go through one of the tunnels, you'll gain a torch. And you can use the torch to light a lantern. And the lanterns are placed in the villages, and they're placed on the unlit side. A hero can go through with a torch, loses the torch after that, it becomes lit, and that hero can gain 6 life instead of 4. That's just the mini expansion that you'll get with the deluxe game. I'm not going to go much more into it. It gave you like a couple more tactic cards too, which I didn't mention either, but we'll do that in a second. So that's movement in a nutshell. The nice thing is all this is summarized on the back of this book here, so you can look at it real quick. The other things that are in the game is attacking. So if you're doing melee and you're adjacent to that player, you're going to do the damage equal to the number on the card. So in this case, it's going to be 3. And the dice down below are going to be attempting to knock back the other unit. So you'll roll the dice. What you're looking to get is going to be these. And if you knock back the other unit, you can move them back however many you had. If you in a straight line. So I can move this one back here. If I had 2, since it can't move up a level when you're being knocked back, that player will gain 1 damage for every movement it couldn't do. The unit then can retaliate when you do an attack, and retaliation would be they can perform an attack as long as the attack's legal. So if I push back this unit and they're trying to do a melee attack, they can't. So he can't attack back. If I push back this wizard, since it can do a ranged attack, that unit can attack back. So ranged attacks, basically what you're going to look for in ranged attack is going to be how far they can get. This is how much damage it can do, so in this case 2. And you're going to roll these two dice for this one. Now you'll have to spend an ammo to do it. And you're going to target your unit. So let's say this is my archer, and I'm within range 2 spaces away, and I'll roll these dice. This is good. If I rolled any of these misses, I would have to pay another ammo to re-roll it and try to get rid of the misses. If I have no misses at the end, I will do the damage on the card to that player, and they will be able to retaliate if they can. That's going to be both melee and ranged attacks. Addition to, and again, this is just a really quick overview. In addition to that, you also have magic attacks. And magic attacks, you're going to just reduce 1 on here. And basically what you're going to do is this is going to be your range, and they're going to say what they do down on the bottom. Now, some magic attacks do area of effect attacks. If you do an area of effect attack, since no unit was specifically targeted, they can't retaliate at all. So that's something to keep in mind. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to spend potions for the amount of dice you want to roll. You're going to roll these dice, and for every little magic symbol you have, you're going to do a damage to, or do whatever it says here, but in this one it's going to do a damage to the unit. And that's simply magic attacks. So I know I went over a lot really quickly, but one other thing I want to go over real quick is part of the end of the turn you're going to draw a tactics card, but at the beginning of the game you're going to get 2 tactic cards and pick 1. So tactic cards here, which you get at the end of each of your turns, is going to have a if, and you can never have more than 2 tactic cards is another thing to keep in mind. So you want to use these up when you can. If you meet the if, you can do the then, and they all do different things. And you're going to want to try to fire these off when you can, so that you can always have at least 2 tactic cards in here, but you also want to be very strategic with it. A couple other really cool things that I wanted to point out for this game is that they also, in the solo mode, you can dive into dungeons. So these ones will flip over, and they have like really cool dungeon spaces where you can fight the different, you can flip those cards and fight different monsters, get different things. You're trying to get your gems. Like I said, the solo mode on here was really well thought through. Couple other things to mention on Tiny Epic Tactics. Again, I didn't go over everything, but I went over the gist of the game. Is there's multiple different modes that you can play in this game. So we went over the 2 to 4 player competitive game. You can also play in teams. There's the solo mode that I talked about, and there's a cooperative mode, and then there's a full-on battle mode. I'll let you discover all these, but just know that there's just a lot to this game. You can do all these different modes. There's a lot of different ways of playing the game. There's just a lot of things you can do with this game, so there's a huge amount of replayability in Tiny Epic Tactics. So let's go ahead back up to the table here, and I'll give you my final thoughts on Tiny Epic Tactics. So I really like Tiny Epic Tactics. There is a lot to this game, and there's a lot of different modes and stuff towards the end of the book that you can employ, and the solo mode, they definitely put a lot of thought in it, and it's a lot of fun. I really like how much care they put into this game and how much strategy you get in the game. This is actually going to be one of those games that you're going to need to play first one time, and then once you, I think most people are going to need to play through a game once to really understand like the movement and how the terrain function and all the different options that you have to gain advantage over your opponent. And then the second game is going to be extremely rewarding because you'll actually understand how that stuff works, and you'll be able to strategically deploy and move your different units in the game, which is the game. This game is highly strategic, all about maximizing and moving your units properly and trying to employ the best strategy, maybe use some tricky tactics throughout the game to like get those majority controls, or duck out of areas that you may or may not be winning on just to gain some more points somewhere else. Really great fun game that is probably one of my favorite in the Tiny Epic lines. It's definitely in my top 5. So if you like Tiny Epic games, or you like going to be that sort of like tactic style game with squad based units, I would highly recommend checking out Tiny Epic Tactics. Thank you for watching.